If you want to continue to follow our adventure, click subscribe. So you don't miss anything, click the bell notification. Well, I thought today I'd talk about the 3 biggest mistakes I see rookie RVers make. People always ask me, okay, what do I need to be an RVer? What do I need? What's the biggest tip that you have to be an RVer? It's not about being an RVer. It's about preparing to be an RVer. I think that is where everything has to start, is right in the beginning. The first thing you need to think about is the source of income. Now, a lot of people talk to me about their source of income. I have an audience that is mostly retired, so most of the comments I get back says Social Security, which is fine. That's a source of income. But if you're not, then obviously you're going to have to find a way to work. Now, there's a lot of ways to do that, and it's easy to research, quite honestly. Everybody's talking about, they want you to come out here on the road, so here's how you make some money to do it. So, but yeah, you can do work camping, you can do online work like I do. Somebody mentioned that you can go to flea markets and different things and pick up a job. But more importantly, and this is the one that really strikes me, is budget. You have to develop a budget. Just the other day, I got a question from somebody, and I never know how to answer these questions. He says, can I live out in a van for $1,000 a month? I have no idea. I mean, I know what I can live on. I know what my expenses are. I know what I need to spend money on. I know I got to have like 3 sources of internet. I've got to pay my insurance costs and all these little things that you got to pay for. I don't know what your expenses are. If you can live on $1,000 a month, that's great. But then you got to think about some other things, and I'm going to talk about those in a little bit, that go on top of what you already pay. So you got to be able to nail down your budget. I hear a lot of people says, "Oh, that takes math." Well, yeah, budgets do take math. You have to know what you're bringing in. You have to know what you're spending. So I think that is the biggest mistake. Is people come out here thinking, "Okay, I got $1,000 a month. I can live this lifestyle." So that leads me right into emergency fund and savings, because I think emergency fund and savings is 2 different things, and I'm going to explain. So an emergency fund, you're going to really need, it's an absolute must. You cannot start this lifestyle without an emergency fund. If you think you're going to come out here and on a hope and a prayer, well, it's not going to work. You're just going to run into issues. I don't consider everything I do as an emergency. A lot of people do. For example, when I had some bad tires, I didn't consider that an emergency. I considered that just normal expenses of the lifestyle. Tires wear out. And so you're going to have to replace tires. That's just the aspect of life. You do that all the time. So to say, okay, well, I'm going to use my emergency fund, I don't know if I agree with that, but that's still a good example. It depends on your criteria of emergency, but if you think that tire replacement is an emergency, then you're going to need an emergency fund for new tires. Carolyn and I had to return back to Missouri twice now during our adventure in the wintertime. And so we did consider this an emergency. We had a family member that was sick, and we had to go back and care for her. Well, had we not had the money in an emergency to go back to Missouri, but when we got there, the expenses didn't stop. We went way over budget month after month while we were there, because we had extra heating costs that we didn't plan for because we wanted to be down south. We had extra traveling expenses because we had to drive back and forth to the family member's house. We took this person to the hospital regularly. So there was a lot of additional expenses that we had to put onto it. So that was all emergency. Then we also had the pop-up camper fire. A lot of people said, well, that's an insurance cost. Well, I don't agree, because insurance wouldn't have covered it. Our pop-up camper cost $600. Of course, I'm talking very inexpensive. What they said when I asked for insurance, that they wouldn't cover replacement costs. The only thing they would cover is if the camper fell off the truck while I was towing it and it hit somebody else. They would cover that damage, but not the camper itself. The other thing they wouldn't cover is the components inside the camper. I had to replace all those things. So I had $600 plus, I don't know what, let's just call another $600. So there was $1,200 that I had to replace right away. So I don't consider emergency fund as part of insurance. I see a lot of people say that. Oh, I got insurance, so I don't need to worry about that. Well, that's great until insurance doesn't cover. Now, I talk about savings as a separate from emergency fund. I think savings has to be separate. For specifically rent. Now, a lot of people say, oh, you don't have to pay rent when you come and live out here. Well, that I disagree with. Eventually, the truck is going to wear out. Eventually, I'm going to have to buy a new truck. So what I do is I take what my payment of this truck used to be, my truck is paid for, but my payment used to be $300. So what I do is I take $300 a month and I put it into savings for when I need to replace my truck. So in 6 years or whatever it is, I can just go and get another truck. Because remember, you're not going to be able to make as much money out here as you do in a stick and brick. So if you think that you're going to just go buy a new truck on credit, it is unlikely, in my opinion, that you're going to be able to get the credit to buy the truck. I don't think anybody's going to finance a truck out here unless, of course, you're retired and you have a retirement. And this one, I think a lot of people fail. I don't know anybody that does this right. Test runs. You got to have 4 long test runs. You got to do one in every season. You got to do one in the winter, summer, fall, and spring. And you can't take shortcuts on this either. Fall, in my opinion, is probably the easiest test run we had, but winter, summer, and spring are the roughest. Now, I know a lot of people say, oh, that's why I'm going to go to Arizona in the winter. Don't worry about it. I'm going to go to Florida. I'm going to go to Texas. You're eventually going to have to spend a winter in a cold climate. Like I said, we had a sick family member, and we had to go and endure cold weather elements. Had we not done a test run in our pop-up camper to find out if it was even possible to do it. Now, imagine that. If we hadn't done the test run, we'd had to come up to Missouri, we'd had to stay in the pop-up camper in the winter, and we wouldn't be able to do it. Let's just say you couldn't do it in a pop-up camper. So everything we learned on our test run, we were able to implement into the actual time we had to go to a cold climate in the winter. But the same is true in the summertime. You're going to want to go stay in your camper when it's 100 degrees outside, because you got to have to figure out how you're going to keep it cool. Are you going to use an air conditioner? We don't have an air conditioner. Now, springtime, everything, oh wow, what's the big deal in spring? Springtime is terrible because of the storms. This spring has been the worst. We've driven through a tornado, we've had hail, we've had high winds, we've had flooding. It's been all over the spectrum, and we've had to deal with all of it. Thanks for watching. Click like if you like the video, and happy travels.